In the wrong place.
Something bad is going.
I'd like to call to order our regularly scheduled DSS board meeting. Just a reminder to please silence your mobile phones. And I'll ask Commissioner Pittman to lead us in the invocation tonight.
Dear God, thank you for once again for the ability to come out, God, and represent our county, God, and help us to consider those in most need, God, here as members of this board, God. Be with the leaders of the DSS and help them navigate through all the problems that they face daily, God, and help us as a board, God, to be supportive and make good decisions for those most vulnerable. Thank you for everything you've done for us. Ask this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Commissioner Masters, would you lead us in the pledge?
Attention, salute, pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 5 is the ethics awareness and conflict of interest reminder. Having time to review that. Are there any disclosures of perceived ethics awareness or conflict of interest tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 6, additions or changes to the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda tonight? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion that we adopt the agenda as it's presented.
So moved. Second.
I think that's for the DOC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. It's making sure.
Thank you. Right, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay. It's in the DSS packet.
Probably. I've got an extra.
It's in the back already. The last page, it was a 9.
13C. I think that's DSS. I think that's Board of Commissioners.
We'll staple from.
Back, I got it.
I had a motion from Jeff, but I didn't catch a second. Steve seconds. All in favor, vote by usual sign. And moving on, item number 8 is our director's update. We'll invite our director, Ms. Wendy Boone. Come give us her update.
Good evening.
Good evening. Missed you from last month.
I know, right?
So give y'all a free month.
pass.
Yeah, sorry. I think we spread thin last month. You bet.
It's okay. It's okay. So I'll just share some updates and things that have been happening, and I will cover some of March events because we did not get to do that. So first of all, as you know, we did have, we celebrated National Social Workers Month in March. And then we also had our Wear Blue Day on March 31st. I know Brandon attended. We had cake and put out our pinwheels and that sort of thing and talked about some child abuse prevention. One of the other things that we did in March was we held, along with Jimmy English, we held a CPR and AED training as well as an Narcan. For our staff, we had probably 25 to 30 participate, so almost everyone. And some of the folks had already been trained previously, so they did not participate, but that, it's good that we have most everybody trained there. Also in March, we had our training, the radar training, which was held with our law enforcement officers, our SRO and social workers. And this is a training that it's really to help the investigation process. And I know Officer Masters is the one who initially brought this to my attention and thought it would be great for our team to do the training together. So we were able to do that and it worked really well. I think we're going to be having another one this summer. So for those that didn't get to participate. One of the things also I kind of want to update you on is the Medicaid expansion. I know we've talked about that over the last couple of months. And for those that may not know, you probably do by now, but the expansion did pass. And Cooper did sign off on that. I was at a director's meeting last week and they talked about this again, because as of right now, there's no budget to support that with the state. So they were saying as soon as the budget is signed, which, they were talking about that, really pushing that forward by the end of May, which, we always want to have it by the end of May, but as soon as it does, they said that expansion would roll out really quick. And so there was even discussion about 60 to 90 days. So that's a lot sooner than what we had originally planned. Now, that's the last I heard. It keeps changing daily on me, but that's the last I heard. So it is coming.
So what that means for us is, how many cases did you anticipate, extra cases that would result as Medicaid expansion rolled out? Was it
Yes.
six
Yeah,
hundred?
around 600. Yes. So we had originally discussed at least one position for Medicaid.
But
So yes.
here's kind of the catch. We don't really know exactly when it's going to roll out. So, obviously they're going to need a position. We talked about the possibility of writing that into the budget contingent of Medicaid expansion rolling out. Like, I'm not sure the best way to approach that, but if they roll it out and they want it done in 90 days, that's not going to give them time to advertise, recruit, and hire someone for Medicaid. So without coming to the board to get approval. So we'd want them to give them the leeway to do that contingent on Medicaid expansion occurring. Did I sum that up
Yes,
right?
yeah. And we had originally planned, hopefully, the beginning of the new year, that we would at least, have that in the budget, and then maybe like in the fall, start hiring and then get that person trained. But it's like happening a lot sooner, or so they're saying now. But yeah, I mean, it could be December again, it's just really hard to tell, but that was the last I heard last week. So
If they only give them a 60-day window, it's going to crunch, it's going to create
Yeah.
a crunch for them to get somebody hired.
yeah, and they were saying, that the directors, you were already going to be behind basically, because by the time you hire and get someone trained, but just the awareness that, I'll continue to keep you updated as I know, but it's just kind of a moving target right now. Also, wanted to update you again on the LEAP supplements. As you all know, in December, we were told and promised that we would get those supplements. Well, we got those in March. And LEAP ends in March. However, we were able to spend that down, like every bit that we got, we spent down. So what we could, it was out there. We do still currently have CIP, so our crisis money. So for those that are out or nearly out, and there's like a medical condition that supports that, like right now with this little cold spill that we're having, we do have CIP funds available if you hear of those in need. And the LEWAP, this is our water program that program was funded through the COVID timeframe, and that is ending in June. So, we've been been able to pay all these past the water bills that have been past due and that sort of thing. We've caught the county up really well with that, which has been nice for Bakersfield and Spruce Pine, but that will end in June. So that's another bill that clients, are going to be having to start paying again because all of these waivers are ending. So just letting you know in case you hear kind of some complaints about that. In April, our staff attended a child and adult mental health first aid training, and this was hosted by JCPC and Mayland. They allowed our staff to come for that training along, I think, with some law enforcement officers as well. Tomorrow, we're actually meeting with the health department to conduct a training together on presumptive eligibility. And so this is where someone may come into the health department and find out that they're pregnant while they're there. This actually helps expedite the Medicaid for them, so we can kind of get that prenatal care on a roll for them. So I just think it's great that we have so many community relationships and so many meetings that we're doing together, trying to build those relationships. I think it's very valuable. And I definitely want to shout out to all of our community members for those. Our next law enforcement and our multidisciplinary team meeting is the 9th of May. So once again, if anyone would like to join those, we'd love to have you. And then also, as far as meetings coming, things that are happening tomorrow, we are actually meeting with, or no, it's Wednesday. We're actually meeting with Norma Duncan. I think I heard you mention her name, our senior Tar Heel. So we're actually meeting with her on Wednesday to really pull her in to hear our side of what's going on within the county as far as our elderly and adult population, and hopefully tie in with her so she can further advocate for us at the DSS level. And then lastly on here, as far as my updates, just once again, want to talk about the subsidy. I know when I was here in March, that was like the last thing on our agenda, and folks were coming in and there was a lot of movement and happenings here within the space. And I just kind of wanted to put that out there again to see if you had any questions about, this is where we were talking about contracting with Southwestern to help provide subsidy for the county. So I wasn't sure if you guys had maybe thought of some questions, or if you kind of wanted me to go over that again to refresh your memory.
Refresh.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, that's fine.
Sprinkle of refreshment.
That's okay. I was getting kind of a look there. So I was picking up what you're putting down there.
Okay.
So yeah, so we so currently we have 2 staff people that are managing subsidy. They're managing subsidy and Work First. And the workload is just growing for both of those programs. So we're looking at just having one person doing Work First and then contracting for subsidy. And this is something that actually there's several counties doing this now. Yancey County is doing this, Jackson County, Graham County. There's multiple counties. I think there's like 12 that are doing this right now, and it's working really well. We actually sat down and met with them. We also have met with our state person to make sure everything's good on that end. We've met with the Partnership for Children because they allocate funding towards that. So currently right now the state allocate $80,000 to manage this program. So that $80,000 would just shift it, kind of like a pass through to this organization to manage subsidy for us. So it would be no extra cost on the county or DSS, of course, or no, we would not ask for additional funds or anything. It would just be a straight through. So they would handle all of the just getting children enrolled, like turnover as far as, you know, our workload. That would help me hopefully manage that on our end. And also like eliminate a need for any additional staff, office space, that kind of thing. And then it eliminates paybacks. So it currently right now, if there's a payback with subsidy, it is the county's responsibility. And with them taking that over, they assume that responsibility as well.
And
so
to give a little more background of the previous director, combined subsidy and my mind's went blank, subsidy and
Work first.
work first. On in
One
one,
person.
one position. And I think that from as far back as you can recollect, that's always been kind of a struggle for that position, reoccurring among different individuals that's held that position. And I don't think we're even pulling down all of that $80,000. We're only able to pull down about
Right.
30 this past year. Is that right?
About 56, I think,
So we currently only got one person doing this,
both jobs.
both jobs. That's right. I heard two
Yeah.
and I was thinking two people, but
Yeah.
just one person doing both. Then you're gonna sub this out to
Southwestern,
Southwest and they'll handle all that.
Complete
Now just
job.
one person just does.
yes,
Work first.
as well as the supervision. So currently our supervisor that is managing APS, which is beast on its own, is also supervising subsidy and work first. And that was also done with the previous director. So we're trying to take that off of that supervisor as well as this other person, just to make it more manageable.
You need a vote
Um,
on this.
It's a
well,
contract.
yeah, it is a contract, which we will be pushing forward with all of our other contracts this month.
Yes, sir. It'd be appropriate to take a vote for approving the contract pending review unless the contract will come back to you folks.
The contract signed by the Board of Commissioner chairs.
It is, yes.
I believe that would be correct.
So we won't need a vote tonight. We could give her the,
Consensus would be fine and we can get a contract, if you wouldn't mind to.
Bring it back.
Mr. Cook and I to review before it comes to the board, that'd be ideal.
Okay,
If we're pushed for time, it can be the same, but it'd be
Okay.
nice to make sure that Southwestern is in fact gonna take care of our repayment for it,
Mhm.
for example.
yeah, and that is what the other counties can, I mean, yes, I hear you, but yeah, they have confirmed that on the other counties level too, but yes, sure.
Thank you.
So yeah, so we're just trying to not ask for any additional staff in that area and workloads, kind of making it more manageable.
sounds too good to be true, Brent.
I think it's one of the things,
No,
I think it's one of those things that we'd like to try and
Yeah,
see how it does.
we
this
could
year.
pilot it, that's how I, and it, kind of put it forward last month when we met, is try it for a year. Let's see what feedback we get from our community. Is it working? If not, we can always revisit that and pull it back.
How's it working in Yancey? I know you've talked to those folks.
I hear nothing but positive from every director that I've spoke with. As far as directors, now have I asked staff within their community that are getting these services? No, but as far as what I'm aware, there haven't been any additional. And I know Tammy spoke with Sonia Morgan.
Graham County,
Mhm.
Graham County. It's part of it and got it for years.
So yeah, there's 12 other counties or 12 counties doing this currently. So. Okay,
Just wonder what the company that's taking there, I'm like, how do they come out with?
They pull down the funds so they get to pull down from that 80,000 and they get to keep, what they pull down.
So they're probably paying somebody less money to manage.
mhm,
That's not getting
the
state
45.
benefits and
Gotcha,
all the
gotcha.
stuff our folks are getting.
right.
Makes sense.
And Mitchell County too currently we're serving more children for subsidy than Yancey County and Avery County too. So it's almost double. I think I had that.
I think our hopes is too that with the incentive to pull down more funds, we might be able to serve more kids and that might benefit our consumers more in the long run too.
Let's find some more of those.
Because we're definitely leaving money on the table.
Pretty good.
Okay, I think that's it. Do you guys have any further questions?
Got any issues, Wendy, that you need help with, anything getting resolved that you're not? I mean, is there anything that this board can do for you that we're not doing? in the current state, I guess.
No, I mean, you guys are always listening, you're engaged in the conversations, things that we're sharing. So no, I can't think of anything right now.
You need a thing, you know, over there?
Thank you.
Mr. Sean? Trying to get my order
Big
mixed up. I was like, who's next?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, we'll pick on Sean.
Don't seem like.
My boss said I
everything's
wasn't
always
allowed.
right here,
That's
so-
why.
Don't seem right.
Can't discuss.
Can't discuss it. No, everything's great. No, it's going well. It really is.
Hey, I will say this, there are lots of problems that these folks take care of. So they figure out a way. There's a whole list of problems, but they address them and work tirelessly to get them taken care of. So saying there's no problems is not accurate. There's just problems that we can't help with. So
It's part of the job. That's basically the problem, is problem solving. Case, risk management and problem solve. So, we did have a slight increase in the kids in custody. We had one child adopted, which was a great success. That child had been in our care for a long time. One of the reasons it extended out as long as it did is there was an appeal that took over like 18, almost 20 months, I think, to get back. But we were able to get that child adopted. That was a huge celebration. We did have an additional 3 children come into custody as well. So we still have 7 kids open for adoption. Just to kind of give you, because we're kind of, there's one of those children are still on an appeal situation. But to kind of break down those 7 that are currently free for adoption. One will be turning 18 this year, so most likely that child will not be adopted. The other 6 children that we currently have free for adoption, all of them are in some type of therapeutic level of care right now. So given their needs, they're not in an adoptable situation. And that's kind of where we're at, because until they're stabilized, it's hard to find a home that's going to be able to take them. So we're going to probably be looking at that number ongoingly for quite some time without much change. So I just kind of wanted to bring you up to speed as to why that number is probably not going to change significantly over probably for the next at least year.
How often does it go that you have a kid that goes all the way to 18 that's never been adopted? I mean, what's the percentage of that? Is it low or is it?
I couldn't tell you it's low. Currently, we have 4 kids, I say kids, young adults that are going to be aging out this year. Out of those, let's see, all but one of them have been in custody more than a year. Some of them have been in custody for extended amount of time. We're talking over 7 years. One's going to be aging out that's been in our care for bumping almost 8 years, I believe. Some of the other ones 5 years. So it does happen. One of our concerns right now is that we're seeing a unique shift in the situation we have, in that right now, out of that 42 kids that are currently in custody, I only have 2 sets of parents that are working a case plan towards reunification. I mean, when I say that, I'm talking about actively working a case plan, not that they don't have a case plan for reunification, but most of our parents have stopped working case plans. And they're seeing that across the state. I've never had this type of situation in all of my career, 26 years in this. I've never seen, you always have parents who give up, who don't continue. I've never had this large number of parents who basically have stopped. They'll come visit their kids, they'll come to court, but as far as actively working towards getting their child back, it's basically we're at a standstill. And I was talking to our consultant the other day saying, how are you seeing this in other places? And basically he's reporting the same thing. Other counties are reporting the same thing.
any
which
idea
is-
why?
There's no real
Just
clear
cultural shift?
explanation.
I mean, is that
I
what?
think it's a social shift. I think it's, I've kind of brainstormed, I kind of what is it, a lack of services, but then you start looking at, okay, you know, I've always worked rural areas. We've always had limited services. So that's not unique to this situation. It's really hard to pinpoint.
So out of 42, you have two.
So,
set of
so
parents.
there's, so I've got a parent, so for those kids, so I've got two sets of parents, which includes 4 kids. That the parents are, where I can say those parents are actively on a weekly basis working their kids. Out of the, so that.
So you'd have 38 kids that you need to find homes. adoption.
Basically, I've got 38 kids in which they are not moving towards permanency with either. Of course, out of those 42, we've got 7 that, you know, have already been terminated, you know, parental rights are terminated, 1 that we're waiting on the appeal, but that's still a huge group of kids that we're seeing that is basically, we're gonna have to be filing going towards, you know, termination of parental rights. And then you got a situation where I've got all these kids now sitting here, potentially not with the capacity to get adopted with eating.
It's just hard to believe. I mean, that just makes me sick to my stomach to think.
It is,
Just like,
it's really, it's mind boggling because when you sit there and you think about it, then what happens is you get a bubble. Then, you know, we've had that huge bubble in our system a couple of years ago that we were able to finally get out, but now I'm afraid that we're sitting on another bubble because these kids are going to get stuck in our system. I use that word kind of generically, but and then you got kids that keep coming in. And so now we're at a potential where we're going to see our cases start going up because we've got this group of kids that we now are kind of just without parents that are actively working.
so
And
basically what I'm like, with that 42, you're saying you got 2 sets of parents. So out of 42 kids, you only got two groups, basically 2 of those it's going to be seeking reunification, and the 40 are just floating.
yeah, now technically 7 of those we have free for adoption already. Seven, you know, so 7 of that 42 have already been terminated. I've got 1 that we've terminated, but we're waiting on the appeal. So I can't technically count them as free for adoption yet. So if you take that, you're looking at 30 kids. Now out of those 30 kids, I've got 4 of those that are going to be aging out this year. So that brings me down to 26 kids, but that's 26 kids that probably are sitting there that they're not actively, you know, there's nobody actively working a case plan in order to get those kids back.
And nothing's changed case plan wise. Any of that stuff's all consistent. It's just,
How long does court system put up to this and say, okay, we've had enough?
From the
You're
stat-
out, you're done. We're not giving you
This-
another
The
chance.
statute gives us basically 12 months of permanency. So the statute is once we hit the 12-month mark, we should be pursuing permanency for that child. Now, everything looks great on paper and statute. Then you start dealing with the reality of court systems that things get extended. Parents start working a case plan. And so the judge gives them a little bit more time. And so it you know, you a little bit of, you know, stop and go type situations. We internally have basically made the decision that we're going to push as hard as we can, that we just don't want kids just sitting there. We don't want to see that, you know, that we've had that situation in the past. And so we're really been working with our attorney, Mr. Huckaday, to really push towards moving these kids if we, you know, terminate parental rights. But, you know, just because you terminate the parental rights doesn't mean that you're going to get permanency, because then you have to find a home for them. So now some of these are in possible homes that will adopt them if they were free for adoption, but not all of them, not all that 26 are. So it's just, it's a unique situation that we're looking at, and just trying to figure out how do we move forward. So we're looking at the potential of filing a lot of, you know, termination of parental rights over this next year,
unless something changes.
unless something dramatically changes.
You've got 4 that are aging out.
We got 4 of those ages.
Is there any kind of, what happens beyond that point?
When they age out, they have an opportunity. So we offer them 18 to 21 program, which is they basically agree, because they're adults at 18, they can basically agree to stay in foster care. And they receive some of the benefits of foster care. We can give them monthly stipends. We can support them with case management services. It's strictly volunteer on their part. And we can help them up through age 21. And that does help them transition. So they just don't turn 18 and then like going, good luck. And now a lot of them will say, they're done with foster, they're done with us. And that's understandable, but they can come back at any time up until the age of 21. And sometimes we have that, they'll leave, be gone for 6 months to a year, realize that real world out there is really tough. And so they call us back and go, hey, can we help? And we've done that. We've got one young man that we brought back in. We're supporting him in one of our transitional programs, helping him after he spent multiple years in the system. So, it's a lot of times we just try to keep that door open. We try to just make sure that they know that, hey, if you need us, we're here. But so that's what we're hoping for on those. They'll agree to it. Some do, some don't. What we try to do in the meantime, that those that we know are heading that direction, is go ahead and start transitioning them into independent living. Like a couple of ours are already in transitional living type programs, getting them prepared for 18. So it's just not like they're in a normal foster home setting now and then just waiting for 18 to come. So we try to do as much as we can for them. And just looking at some of that data, if you look down, we currently have 28 kids out of county, and that number has been kind of increasing. So I wanted to just briefly talk about that for a minute to kind of give you an idea of what does that number look like, and what's that kind of that makeup. So out of that 28, 9 of those are out of county because they're in relative placement. 4 of those are out of county because they're in a group home setting. 11 are out of county because they're in a therapeutic setting. 1 is out of county because we have a young man that's in our custody who doesn't have official placement. So he is currently in the ER with Mission, being housed at they're able to support him until we're looking for placement. It's a young man that has some mental health as well as some IDD needs, developmental needs. So that placement's a little challenging. And then we have 3 that are out of area who are in the independent living program. 2 of those 3 are already 18 to over 18. So when you're looking at those numbers, those are the reasons we have that number of kids out of our county. If you look at those, 25 of those 28 are 10 and older. So it tends to hit our older kids. That pushes our kids out of the area as well as so. Just to kind of give you a breakdown of that number. We have 3 families currently in the licensing process. As far as calls that came in last month in April, we're kind of looking at March and April's numbers. We had 26 calls reports in March, 18 in April. And we're screening in right around 50% of those, and currently have 12 open assessment cases in CPS. We have 5 in-home cases that are currently open. And so those are our CPS numbers. Any questions about those? APS, we had 4 calls last month, 2 were screened in. We have 2 that are currently in assessments with APS, and we're serving 2 adults in case management services, and then 2 in-home, and 13 payee, 16 guardianship.
Looks like APS numbers are down a little bit.
What's kind of, it's one of those things where the numbers have come down. The difficulties and challenges with the cases are going up. We're still seeing a trend of younger adults coming in with some heavy-handed needs, mental health, underlying needs. So that's one of our concerns there. When it comes child subsidy, we're serving 82 currently 82 kids in subsidy. And then in Work First, we had 6 new applicants, and we still got 5 children that are children only or ongoing services.
And the subsidy program is the one that we'd be using. What's the name of the company? Southwest.
Good question. That's all I have.
Any questions for Sean?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Miss Tammy?
Hey, long time no see.
It's been a minute, ain't it?
I just have a brief report for you for our financials. We are 10 months in on our expenditures. We are currently at 76% of cost on all programs where we should be at 83. So we're running around 7% under cost. That being said, in a reimbursement system, when you're under cost, your revenue is going to be less, your reimbursements are going to be less. So we are 8 months in on our revenue because we run 2 months behind on that. And so that leaves us at 60% of reimbursement or revenues for all programs. So it's running just 6% under because we should be around 66% this time of year, 8 months in. We do have a good revenue that will hit in May. That should catch us up. So there's 181,000 in unposted revenue that will post to the May reports. That's pretty much it. I foresee that we will catch up at the end of the year. We've seen that in the last 5 years that I've been doing this. I did move some money around in some of these higher accounts that we were hitting. And so some of it is a balanced budget amendment that should come out to y'all. And next month, some of these higher accounts, I moved some money over to cover some of our costs where we were under cost. I moved it where we were over cost. So.
I'll just point out two things for my fellow board members. The overtime pay, we're at 195% over budget. I know y'all can help me out here. I know that's because we had a couple of very challenging situations for finding placement, and we had 2 staff members with those children around the clock over the weekend. Is that what contributed to the bulk of that?
How do they track it? Do they physically clock in up there, or they write this down on like? So it's pretty much on their honor to make sure they put what they.
And the supervisor.
the-
Where you'd have, I guess, the check and balance in that system is if you have an employee that is coding the county time and not pulling down reimbursement, that's kind of a sign that there's an issue. Correct?
Yeah, so when I pull those day sheet reports, I can see how much time is being coded to just what we call 990G, which is just administrative time that they can't code to cases. So we're making sure I look at that every month as a percentage of time and make sure that that's not excessive. It usually is leave time or people in training, because most of the time training is not codable.
So
cases.
if you're there working, you're gonna be working directly on a child's case or adult's case, and you should be able to pull down some reimbursement from state and fed. And if they're not coding that time, then
It's glaring.
there's some questions that's gonna be asked, I guess.
Also, when they submit their timesheets and their leave request forms, there's a part that shows their overtime and they have to state what they were doing. All supervisors have to look at that, sign off on it. That's a valid. They can't just put it down.
I think there was 2 separate kids. Right, is that correct that y'all had to stay the whole weekend? Yeah, so you talk about 2 employees.
You
working
guys
on-
clock in as teachers? You have to
We
clock
do
in?
clock ins. We have a time management system.
I have to clock in too.
We
I
do.
don't see how we don't have clock ins for all this stuff. I
There
mean,
is,
not that I clock in, I don't work on the clock, but
we clock
I
in
can
more
tell you-
salary too.
I can tell you
So-
when I was in the building or when I wasn't in the building, I guess is
Right.
what I'm saying.
Well,
If
previously,
you,
historically, they used the computers to log in and used it as a time clock. But it ended up not being true to when the person was in the building. Sometimes they would hit the building and be called right to a case or a task or a meeting. And so you couldn't really go by
like a,
when their computer logged in,
Well,
we had some old IT. So you're talking 10, 15 minutes of the, sometimes to get all the way logged in. That didn't seem true to.
the other issue I guess you'd have is on call stuff. Like if you're at home, you're not necessarily gonna have to go to the office to go out and call. You know, I know a lot of your on-call workers or a lot of your, not your on-call workers, but
I mean, you guys know it. I mean, if there's I guess I always assume the worst in people. So you guys would know if there's a problem. I mean, if you feel like there's issues with that, I mean, there's things that we could do to help get scanners in up there to where people had to punch in.
For me, it is important. We've been down staff as well.
Well,
So it's one supervisor, a chunk of their time.
Eh.
Is the majority of it, she's covering 32 of them.
We approved that visitation worker, which should have helped with that as well.
And then.
I just wanted to point it out because it's an anomaly. The other thing I would point out is the guardianship housing, which, should be on our radar as a concern. That's directly related to APS, so y'all can help me out here. When,
That's really the biggest concern we have from this unknown liability.
Financial
is
liability.
that Financial liability is that whenever we take guardianship or required to take from the statute, it doesn't matter whether that person can pay the Riverton Board or not. If we have to take custody, most likely guardianship, I should say, that person normally is not gonna be able to stay.
and so,
And at that point, we have to then find placement, and if that person doesn't have enough income,
We're responsible for that.
we are
placement.
fully responsible for that. And we've had that situation on a couple of occasions, and some of it is situational and some of it's ongoing. And it's just, you never know from one day to the next what your liability could be. And that's the concern is as our county is getting older, and that population within our county, that huge bubble we have in our community, that potential liability, financial liability is one of our communities and our greatest concern. We brought that to you all a couple of times, but and there's just no way to predict it. There's no way to plan for it. But, I think Tammy's doing her best to project out, going, okay, this is the trend we're seeing, so we're trying to project it out. So you don't have from one day to the next, really what you want.
Sometimes some of those monies can come back into after we've taken guardianship and we've gone through the resources. Sometimes those monies can eventually funnel back in. That is one account that we did amend to cover some of that cost.
and what's really gonna hurt is like the skilled nursing facilities where you have an $8,000 a month, deal to that you have to pay for out of county dollars. And it doesn't matter, like if the hospital's in our county. So if somebody comes to the hospital and we have to assume custody of this adult, because the hospital's in our county, they're our responsibility. Same with the Bryan Center and the Mitchell House. So if somebody comes into custody, that's a resident of those places, they're in our county. So it doesn't matter if they come from
That can be prolonged.
from Florida or wherever, doesn't matter, they're ours. So just something to keep on your radar. They've talked about that several times, and that's kind of just wanted to point that out, that number.
That's another reason why we want to meet with, Stephen Smargill to advocate at the state level for that, as far as some funding.
That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Oh. We do, lost my agenda. There it is. No, that's the regular agenda. No, it's not. Losing my mind here. Thank you. We don't have any items for discussion tonight, but we do have a need for a closed session. Should I read the statute now or do I ask for?
Don't necessarily have to believe that the purpose for the closed session would be to discuss personnel matters,
Yes,
which is,
General Statute 143-318-11, Section 6.
yes, sir, that's correct.
Yeah. So,
If you take a motion to that effect, that'd be appropriate.
I make a move, we go into closed session to discuss personnel.
Hannah Harley is made the motion, Steve seconded. All in favor, vote by usual sign.
Who do you need present for the?
I need Wendy and I need our HR manager Glenda and clerk and our attorney. County manager, same thing. Oh, yeah, yes, sorry, county manager.
Good to go. Cheer.
I'm gonna step to the bathroom.